Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome back to the show UltraRunning Magazine editor Amy Clark, hot off her finish at Javelina 100K. Hey, Amy, how you doing?
Good, Scotty. How are you?
Great. I really want to get into the November issue of the magazine, but before we do, I really want to hear about your race at Javelina. I have no idea what happened, but I do know you finished. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was my first Javelina experience, and wow, that place is incredible. I think it's pretty legendary for being the Halloween party of the, ultra running world, and it definitely holds up to that label. It's so much fun. There's so many people. I mean, you go to a lot of ultras and it's a few hundred. This is like 1,000 runners, and then they've got costumes and they've got music and they've got crazy stuff going on, but really truly a good ultra feel. They take care of you when you're down there, man. It's just it's a beautiful thing. It's like each aid station is just stellar, like top notch. Volunteers are amazing. The course was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I'd never run in the desert before, so that was a new experience for me, and I wasn't sure what to expect, but I loved it.
So that's an exposed course, if I'm not incorrect about that.
Yeah, it's I would say so. It's exposed. I would say, they say no shade because there's no trees. There's cactuses, but or cacti, but yeah, there's no real shade, but it's still really lush and green. The trails actually, I mean, it can get kind of rocky, but it's pretty smooth. There's some elevation gain, but not a ton. So it's pretty, fast. But yeah, it's beautiful. And then, loop after loop, get it done.
So what is the terrain like? What are you running on? Is it, I hear desert, I think it's sandy.
Right. No, there was some sand. There's like some washes that you run through, but mostly I would say there's some rocky sections, but for the majority of the trail, it's kind of a crushed granite-y kind of feel. So, and it's pretty flat trail. There's not a lot of, rutted sections. So it was pretty buttery, I would say, in my opinion.
Well, and does it now in years past they would do like a washing machine course? Would you go one direction
right
for one loop, then the opposite way? Is that still true?
No, they're doing one direction only. They did that this year, and I think that's going to stay that way. They did it for COVID, and I think they're just going to stick with it. I think there's some issues with, I can't even tell you what the issues were, but I know that there was some things that they fixed with the one direction. The only bummer was that, you didn't see people, you just have people passing you, so you saw their backs this time. So, I could identify people sometimes, but yeah, it was kind of harder to connect with people.
From my understanding, there were quite a lot of thongs out there to be seen.
There was a few, yes. Yeah, people were having fun out there. There was lots of costumes.
And a lot of butt cheeks too.
A lot of butt cheeks.
So how did the run go for you?
It went really well. I have to tell you, I've had a really hard year. And I don't know if it's a mixture of physical and mental, or I don't know what, but it's been tough. And I've had a couple 100Ks in the past couple years that I've had DNFs at, and one I just didn't make the cutoff, and the other I pulled myself. But my race this time at Javelina, for some magical reason, it was great. So it just went really well. I couldn't have asked for a better day. So.
And have you done the 100K distance before?
Yeah. So this was my third 100K finish. And honestly, it's one of my favorite distances, just because it provides that like little more than a 50K. Well, it's a double 50K, but it just adds that, that difficulty is almost like in the sweet spot. So where you're pushing yourself a little bit past the 50K, but you still get to finish at night, where you're not, well, some people actually went through to the next day at this race. But, for me, I was done by 10:30, got to go to bed, wake up the next morning. Yeah. So
Did you camp there?
I did. Yeah.
You did? See, I
Yeah,
think that's such a cool part about this event is that it's like a tent city out there.
it is.
I got to watch a little bit of the coverage on YouTube with the live feed, which was just so cool that they're able to do it.
Yeah.
Jamil and his team, they do such a wonderful job, especially on the technology front. But, you know, I got a live stream from a drone just flying over folks with all the tents out there.
Yeah.
So what was that like to like have a bunch, because the tents are like, I don't know, like 2 feet apart from each other, something
Right.
like that. Yeah.
Right. And honestly, I didn't know what to expect. I was like, wow, I'm not gonna be able to sleep. It's gonna be rough. But it was everybody's so respectful. And it was honestly, the tents were the furthest away from the start line that they could be. So if you had earplugs like I did, I could pretty much go to sleep at night. But again, everybody's super respectful. They have everything kind of set up that people need as far as food and, you know, facilities. And it works really well. And I think that's why they keep doing it. I was able to I went down by myself. So I rented a tent and a cot and a sleeping bag, and that was all I needed.
So cool. Way to go.
Yeah.
Way to go, guys. So the main event, we're here to talk about the November issue.
Yeah.
So what do you guys have in store this month?
So November is our ultra running history kind of theme. And again, these themes don't always, you know, come to fruition like I expect them to. This one was interesting because we covered AC 100, and that actually Jade, the second place women's finisher, was on the cover in that race. And there was
place at AC 100, right?
AC 100, Angeles Crest 100. And that race has been around since 1986. And it's gone through a lot of change. And so I think that covering it this year was a big deal because they've gone through, you know, forest fires. They've had to alter the course. So it's now an out and back. And yeah, it's just evolved over the years. But I think it's one of the sport's, you know, main kind of historic hundreds. So yeah, so it's kind of cool that we were able to cover it this year.
Yeah. And it's got an old school vibe to it.
It does.
Your only exposure is to like Western states, you know, which is great, but to go to AC 100 and just pick up that sort of down homey feeling of that, and it's just different, and I love that it exists. Yeah,
it seems like it's got a really good vibe. I've never been, haven't run it, but it seems like it really does have an old school feel, which I love. So I was excited we got to cover it this year. Jade actually wrote the race report for us. So, well, she submitted it, and we ended up finding some great photos and putting her race report with them, and it all works really well in the magazine. So yeah,
way to go, Jade. All right.
Yeah. And then we've got a few cool profiles on Eleanor. One's on Eleanor Robinson that Ellie Greenwood wrote. Eleanor was kind of a trailblazer in the ultra running world back in the 80s. She was one of the first women to do Badwater. She was up running with Yanis Koros and, you know, all the world record holders. I mean, she really paved the way for a lot of women in ultra running. So back when there were not a lot of women in the sport. And then we've got a good profile on Walt Stack, which Dean Karnazes wrote, talks about Walt Stack, who was a kind of a bear back in the day, and was running and working construction and running miles and just doing crazy stuff back. I think he was one of the first runners profiled in the Just Do It campaign for Nike. So,
no kidding.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
At like age 75 or something like that.
So what do you think, like, what are some like larger takeaways and when covering ultra running history, what is it about these runners that make them so special, do you think?
I think that honestly, and this is where my love of the sport comes into play, but knowing that these people were doing this sport back when there was no GPS, there was no, you know, handheld water bottles, there was no hydration vest. They were just pumping out these miles, you know, figuring out a way to do it and get it done without this technology that we had, with, you know, just a handful of people who are also doing it at the same time. So it's a very kind of birth of our sport kind of thing, that you're looking at these people going, you guys were the first ones doing this, not the first ones, but obviously some of the only people in the country at the time doing the sport, and you set the precedent for the rest of us and made it possible so that we could be here today. So yeah,
That's a good
it's pretty
answer.
cool. Yeah. We also profiled Bob Becker. Erica Hoagland wrote I Am an Ultra Runner, and her column kind of asked the question and answer. And Bob Becker is, as you probably saw at Badwater this year, attempted to finish and break the record for the 70 plus age group.
Yeah.
He's also a race director for the Keys 100. Pretty amazing fella at age 77.
Age 77,
so,
folks.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it is.
And so let's talk about the race reports.
Yeah.
And what reviews you guys have in store for us.
Great. So that's the history part. We've got reviews on headlamps, lighting by Donald Baraglio. He covers a fair range of, I believe, headlamps, and there might be a waist lamp or two thrown in there. But it's a good comprehensive as far as like all the brands and stuff go.
Yeah, you could say like, why is reviewing headlamps like so important? Like you'd think like headlamps, like I'll just go grab just a headlamp from REI, but
well, let me tell you.
Yeah, let me tell you. But wait.
So my experience this weekend, headlamps are important when running in the dark. And when you're doing an ultra, you're likely going to experience running in the dark. My headlamp in particular, I've only used at a few ultras, and it does a weird thing, but you never want to get stuck in the dark without a light. And so you've got to know your light. You've got to know, and you've got to have a backup. You've got to have batteries backup. You got to have confidence that you're not going to get stuck on the trail in the dark. So yeah. That was going through my head all night, and I was a little concerned, but I made it.
Yeah, there are three things that I look for in a good headlamp. Lumens, number one. Lumens for me just give me the security that I want and desire for safety purposes when I'm out in the dark, so I don't tow a damn rock. I mean, it's hard enough for me running and not tripping when it's daytime. All right.
Right.
The second one is longevity. Like how long can the sucker be on until I need to replace the batteries? And like the fourth one, okay, I'll add a fourth one. Another one is like, can you lock the headlamp? Like, because I have a history of like, my light has been on in my bag all damn day long because it like bumped up against something hard and just like switched on.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my favorite.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Can I add one to that though?
Please do.
Fit, because I have had headlamps in the summertime because I didn't have the experience to know that as I put it on my head, it just slowly dropped down. So fit is an important one. And honestly, what I've done since then, I figured it out. Somebody gave me this tip somewhere along the way, but I wear my hat backwards, my ball cap, my UltraRunning magazine hat, and I stick the light through the back thing.
Yeah, that little hole, right?
Yep, the hole.
That's what it's there for, folks.
Yes.
You heard it here first. Yes. That's why it's there.
That's the hat. that's the hole.
That's your headlamp hole right there.
Where I put my light. Yep. But they do have the ones that have the strap above, and I know that a lot of people wear those. Sometimes I can't wear head stuff at night.
The G-string of headlamps, I can't do it. I just, well, it's because I'm usually wear a ball cap. And so, the ball cap, going back to my hat, my little demo here, it has that little metal button on the very top, you know? And so it presses down on that. It just doesn't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I believe that.
Yeah. But headlamps, I love it. I'm such a geek for headlamps. It's ridiculous.
You should be, because and I don't test mine enough. I should. Okay. So PSA, if you're gonna run at night, test your dang headlamp and test it numerous times, because you're going to be running with it on your head for a long time. You're going to sweat, especially in the summer, and you don't know what it's going to do or how long, it can do.
Or God forbid you get the headlamp stuck on the red light mode. or the strobe mode, right?
Yeah,
Like just like
exactly.
sometimes I can't figure out, like, do I press it 3 times, or is like
Right.
do I hold it
Right.
for 3 seconds? Like, what do I do exactly?
Yeah.
So getting to know your headlamp is so important.
It's so
Um,
important. Yeah.
and so like recently, like, so now it's like it's dark when I run with my running group in the morning. So we'll have headlamps on. And so when I'm passing somebody, they're coming towards me and their headlamp is like at their waistline. I always think that in the distance, like someone's running with a toddler.
Oh, well, and also I ended up I felt really bad. I was really conscious of going in the aid stations at Javelina and turning my headlamp off, right? Because you don't want to blind the volunteers and everybody else that you're
Yeah.
talking to. But I went in the restroom like during that time, and then I came back out and forgot to turn it off. And so I was like, it felt terrible. But yeah, that's another
Blinding
thing.
runners. Do you do the thing where you pass someone and you kind of cover your headlamp as you
Yeah,
pass them
yeah,
by? Yeah,
yeah,
just as a
totally.
courtesy. Yeah.
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 So yeah. So
Headlamp stuff.
headlamps,
It's important. It's more
it's
important than you
important.
think, folks. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So that's why we cover it. We also have some race reports. Waldo, which was written by Austin Meyer, who was written for us before. He came in, I believe, 8th overall. And we have AC 100, like I said. We covered a couple, I think it's Hell on Gravel, a 50K in Kansas, I believe. And that one looks like there's this picture in the magazine of this guy running on this gravel, but it's like big rocks. I wouldn't call it gravel, but it looks like overall it looks like gravel, but they're big rocks. So it doesn't look like fun. I think there's a good section in that race with nice size gravel. So
I want to go back a second to the first race you mentioned, first race report, which is Waldo.
Waldo.
and why Waldo is a significant race out here in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what makes Waldo so special? Because I think you've been out there before a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. So Waldo was started back in the early 2000s by Craig Thornley, race director for Western States, and I wouldn't say a good friend of mine, but a friend of mine, Kurt Ringstad. So the two of them together went out. I think Craig at the time was a ski patrol member at Willamette Ski Pass, where it starts and finishes. And Kurt went out and put together a course for the race. And so he created the course. Craig helped start the race. Together they did it. It is a beautiful, beautiful course, 100K. It was, well, it's still a Western States qualifier, but it just runs through some of the most beautiful trails in Oregon. So
on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of difficulty, everyone's different, but according to your scale, your scale, the Amy Clark scale, what would you put in terms of difficulty Javelina versus Waldo? Two different courses, I know. One's flat, one's
totally
elevation.
completely different courses.
Yeah.
Totally completely different climates.
But I'm thinking like for the person like thinking about, oh, I want to decide I want to do Waldo, do I want to do Javelina, like, but they're not familiar with both of them.
Right. Well, I guess let's talk about difficulty on different terms. So when it comes to elevation, you've got Javelina 1,500 feet per loop. So that's a total of like 4,500 feet total. And you've got Waldo, which is a total of 11,000 feet, I believe. And there's a lot of climbing at Waldo. And so the difficulty climbing wise for Waldo is, I'm going to say like an 8. And like Javelina is probably like a 3. As far as the weather goes, you're going to get Javelina, you're going to get heat, and you're going to get direct sun. And so that difficulty is going to be like, I would say a 7, depending on the year. Waldo is usually pretty cool. It can get hot during the day because it's in August, but and it may be smoky. So on a typical year, I would say it's probably like I don't know, the heat's probably like a 5, 6. It is really cool the last couple of years that I've been there. Because I swept this year with Pam Smith, but yeah. So and then as far as like other stuff goes. The aid stations are amazing. The trail's amazing at Waldo. Trail's amazing at Javelina. So it's kind of equal balance. But yeah.
Does Waldo require a qualifier?
I don't believe so, but I don't know about that. I can't tell you for 100%
worries.
sure.
Yeah,
I
just
don't think
curious.
I know they warn you that it's not a first time ultra. So
Right.
I think that's very clear when you are signing up. They may ask for a previous ultra that you've done when you sign up for the lottery, but yeah.
Well, the photos are beautiful.
They are. Jesse Ellis did an amazing job.
Oh,
That's
he's so
Wonder
good.
Photography.
Such a talent.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else we should know about the issue?
You know, I made some notes, and Jeff Kozak wrote a great column, and it's kind of about ultra running history. He talks about Scotty Mills, and a nice conversation they had, a little laugh at the AC 100. So it kind of circles back to the AC 100, and how things have changed over the years. So it's a good little read for sure.
Great.
Kind of gives you a sense for the history behind the sport and how things are changing.
This is such an important issue, as we can just glean so much experience from this magazine. It's kind of at the heart of why we do this crazy ass sport. And we can't forget, what our origins are. And we owe a major debt of gratitude towards these folks who are these trailblazers, as you mentioned before. Because they totally are, man. They went to the bucket of grit every single time they went out, and adventure and just new experiences. Man, how cool would it be to be part of that?
I know.
I mean, we're still doing it. We're still, doing it in our own way. But there was that was like next level stuff. Right.
We didn't have cell phones back then, people.
We didn't. No spot devices. If something happened to you, God forbid, good luck. You better hope a ranger stops on by.
I have to say, I met an ultra runner this weekend who was probably 26. He had just finished Wasatch back in September. So he was covering the miles, and he was out running the 100-miler this weekend. And he and I were talking about, I said, do you follow the elites and the golden ticket, race? Cause that was a golden ticket race this weekend at Javelina. And he's like, I don't follow the elites. He's like, I would much rather just run up next to a legend on the trail and start talking to him about what it was like back in the day. I was like, that's what it's about.
It's humbling, man. I got to spend like an hour with Frank Bozanich one time, and ooh-wee. If you don't know who he is, Google damn Frank Bozanich.
Yes, folks. Yes, for sure.
All right, Amy, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations again on Javelina and this issue. I don't know how you do it all, but you do, and you're amazing. So
awesome. Thank you, Scotty. You're amazing as well, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. All right.
Awesome. Good to see you.
You too.